Welcome to True Soul Chronicles, where wealth meets truth and power bows to authenticity. In a world obsessed with status and social climbing, we tell a different kind of story. Stories of hidden identities and quiet strength. Stories where the billionaire wears jeans instead of Armani, where the waitress speaks with more dignity than the socialite, and where true worth has nothing to do with net worth. This is not about rags to riches. This is about the courage to choose love over luxury, honesty over image, and authenticity over approval. Here, the underdog doesn't just survive, they triumph. The arrogant fall, the humble rise. And poetic justice always finds its way home. Because in the end, the greatest fortune isn't what you inherit or earn, it's what you're brave enough to choose when everything else falls away. This is Billionaire Heart Stories, where every heart has a price tag, except the ones that truly matter. Now, let's begin. The glass didn't reflect Paul Hartwell so much as it trapped him. A ghost suspended 43 floors above Boston Harbor, caught between dying April sunlight and the cold fluorescent hum of his executive suite. At 6:47 p.m., the financial district below bled workers onto subway platforms, the city exhaling its daily burden of ambition. Paul pressed his palm against the window, felt the chill seep through, and wondered if anyone down there felt as alone as he did up here. Mr. Hartwell. His assistant Marcus hovered at the threshold, quarterly reports clutched like scripture. Another record quarter, sir. Another record quarter. The words landed like an epitaph. Paul managed his practiced smile, the one that cost nothing and meant less. Leave it on the desk. Thank you. He loosened his $3,000 tie and caught sight of the Hartwell compass, rose watch in his desk drawer, his grandfather's gift, engraved with words that haunted him. True north is not a direction, but a choice. And Paul had spent 4 years choosing direction over truth, maintaining 2 lives with a magician's precision, terrified that merging them would poison the only authentic thing he had left. The friend group. 6 people who'd known him before the billions, before the glass tower, before he'd learned to smile with dead eyes. Paul changed in the executive bathroom, jeans, navy sweater, the costume of normalcy, and took the T from State Street to Green Street Station. 25 minutes of watching real people live actual lives. A paint-stained kid arguing about whether tacos were sandwiches, an elderly man reading Neruda, a couple debating dinner with casual intimacy that made his chest ache. By the time he reached Doyle's fire pit, the CEO had evaporated, leaving behind the man who'd volunteered at a community garden 4 years ago and stumbled into friendship. The fire glowed like a haven. Sophie was mid-story, gesturing wildly. David argued about searing temperatures. Marcus and Jen shared that married couple telepathy. And Ellie, she sat cross-legged on the wooden bench, hair catching firelight like spun copper, laughing with her whole body, head tilted back, utterly unself-conscious. Paul felt the familiar tightness in his chest. The whisper that said, "She's everything you want and nothing you deserve to touch with your wealth-stained hands." "Paul," Sophie waved him over. "We're betting who gets married first. My money's on David proposing to his sourdough starter." The conversation flowed. Jokes. Jabes. Comfortable in chaos. Ellie met his eyes across the fire. Smiled with warmth that felt like sunlight. And Paul made a reckless decision. He lifted his beer and mock toast. "Ellie, marry me." The group laughed. Sophie threw a napkin, but Ellie went very still. Her eyes found his across the flames and the noise dropped away. When she spoke, her voice was quiet enough that only he could hear. "I thought you'd never ask." Time stopped. Paul's heart hammered. This wasn't the script. This wasn't the joke. Ellie's expression was vulnerable, open, honest, terrifying. His phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Paul fumbled for it with numb fingers. Victoria called the office. She knows about the Jamaica Plain apartment. She's asking questions. Cold dread settled in his stomach. His 2 worlds, kept separate for 4 years, were colliding. And Ellie was watching, waiting for a response to words that felt like confession. "Walk?" Paul's voice was rough. "Somewhere quieter?" Ellie unwrapped from the bench with easy grace. "Lead the way." As they moved toward the dimly lit patio, leaving fire warmth and laughter behind, Paul's internal voice screamed what he couldn't say aloud. 4 years of careful distance. 1 joke. 10 seconds. And now everything's crashing down. The money, the lies, Victoria's vengeance. I'm about to have a conversation that could destroy the only real thing in my life. Or finally, make it real. His phone buzzed again. The weight of pretending had never felt heavier. The side patio was quieter. String lights casting warm pools on weathered wooden tables that had witnessed 1,000 conversations like this and none like this. Ellie leaned against the railing, arms crossed not defensively but like she was holding herself together. The cool April night carried the scent of beer and grilling meat from inside. Distant laughter, a reminder of the world they'd just left. Paul's hands found his pockets, fingers instinctively seeking the compass watch. That nervous tell Ellie had never questioned. The silence between them was charged, 4 years of unspoken things pressing against the boundaries of friendship. I wasn't joking, Paul. Ellie's voice was steady despite the vulnerability in her eyes. I know I should have laughed it off, kept the moment light, but I'm tired of pretending. I've liked you for a long time. Maybe since that first community garden day, when you couldn't tell a tomato plant from a weed and refused to give up until you got it right. Paul's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her everything. The billions, the company, the reason he'd been holding back. But the words stuck like glass in his throat. His mother's suicide note flashed through his mind. I don't know who loves me and who loves what I represent. The gap between us. He stopped, searching for words that wouldn't reveal too much. Ellie, you don't know everything about my life, my work, my family situation. It's complicated. I never wanted to drag you into complicated. Her expression shifted, not hurt, but a carefully constructed neutrality he recognized as armor going up. It's okay, I get it. I shouldn't have. No. Paul closed the distance between them, not touching, but close enough that she had to look up. The gap I'm talking about isn't about you not being enough. It's about me being too much, in ways you don't understand yet. But what I need you to hear is this: you're the best part of my week. Every week. You have been for 4 years. What if I want to ruin it? She said it with a small, brave smile. What if I'd rather risk the friendship than spend another year wondering what if? I'm not fragile, Paul. Whatever complicated looks like, I can handle it. Paul felt the weight of the moment. This is where he should tell her about Hartwell Industries. All of it. But fear won. Let me show you something. Not here. Somewhere we can actually talk. They drove his modest Honda Civic the 1.2 miles to Arnold Arboretum in comfortable silence. At 10:30 p.m., the park was officially closed. But Paul knew a gap in the fence near Bussy Brook Meadow where locals slipped through. The dirt path stretched before them under a canopy of stars, rare for Boston. Ellie's shoulder occasionally brushed his. Paul started talking. Carefully edited truths. His mother's death. His father's sudden passing forcing him into a career he never chose. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted things from you. I built a whole personality around not needing to belong to anyone's world, Ellie admitted softly. And then I met you, and I wanted to belong to yours. They stopped walking. Paul reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The first time he'd let himself touch her with intent. Ellie's breath caught. He leaned in, and just as their lips were about to meet, Paul's phone exploded with vibrations. 3 calls, 2 texts, one from his lawyer. I'm sorry, I have to... He stepped away, and Ellie caught fragments. Cannot comment. Embargo until Monday. Tell Victoria's people no statement. When he returned, his face was drawn. Work emergency. I have to go. As Paul drove her home in silence, Ellie noticed his knuckles white on the wheel, jaw clenched. What kind of consultant gets emergency calls at 11 p.m. about embargoes and statements? When he dropped her at her apartment, he caught her hand. This isn't me running away. Can we talk tomorrow? Actually talk? No interruptions? She nodded, but watching his taillights disappear, a small voice whispered, maybe the gap is bigger than you thought. The waterfront pavilion glowed against the darkening harbor, string lights casting golden reflections on water that lapped gently against weathered pier posts. The spring air carried salt and the competing scents of food trucks, Korean tacos, lobster rolls, wood-fired pizza. Art installations dotted the harbor walk, metal sculptures that caught the dying sunlight, interactive light displays, local painters showcasing Boston's working-class neighborhoods with raw, unflinching honesty. Paul should have known better. Should have recognized the Ashford Kane Foundation's logo on the event banners. But he'd been distracted by the week since the Arboretum, a week of cautious hope that felt dangerously like happiness. He and Ellie had texted constantly, coffee twice at JP cafes far from downtown. Last night's movie night, where she'd taken his hand under the blanket, her fingers lacing through his with quiet certainty. The kiss afterward on her doorstep, soft, tentative, perfect. They hadn't defined what they were, but arriving together tonight felt like a declaration. His arm rested around Ellie's shoulders as the friend group claimed a picnic table near a sculpture exhibit. She fit perfectly against his side, occasionally interjecting sharp commentary that made everyone howl. David was mid-rant about pretentious fusion cuisine when Paul saw her. Victoria Ashford Kane held court near the main pavilion, elegant in cream designer silk and pearls. Surrounded by Boston society elite like a queen among courtiers, Paul's body went rigid. What's wrong? Ellie felt the change immediately. My ex is here. The words tasted like ash. It might get uncomfortable. Sophie's voice cut through too loud. The Ice Queen fiancé? Good. Let her see you've upgraded to someone with actual human emotions. But Paul's dread only grew. Victoria didn't do coincidence. She orchestrated. And she was drifting closer. 20 minutes of careful maneuvering, making it seem accidental, before Victoria discovered Paul with practiced surprise. Paul, I didn't know you attended public events. The emphasis on public cut like a scalpel. Her gaze swept the friend group, dismissive inventory, before landing on Ellie with cold assessment. You must be the new girlfriend Paul's been hiding. Victoria extended a manicured hand. How refreshing that he's embracing simplicity. Ellie took the handshake without flinching. Ellie, and I prefer honest to simple, but I can see how you might confuse the two. The group's suppressed laughter made Victoria's smile tighten. She shifted tactics, turning to Paul with poisonous politeness. I saw the Bloomberg piece is scheduled for Monday. Should be quite revealing. I wonder what your friends will think when they finally understand the full picture of who you really are. Paul's face went white. The friend group exchanged confused glances. What Bloomberg piece? Before Ellie could ask, Victoria's attention returned to her. You're a graphic designer? Freelance? That must be so challenging financially. I admire people who make it work on limited means. Paul has always had a soft spot for charity cases, haven't you, darling? Something in Paul snapped. His voice dropped to CEO, cold, absolute authority radiating from every syllable. Victoria, walk away now, or I'll ensure every board you sit on knows exactly why our engagement ended. Victoria's composure cracked, just a flash of genuine fear. She knew he had that power. She just hadn't expected him to wield it. Her smile tightened. See you Monday, Paul. I'm sure it will be illuminating for everyone. The evening deflated like punctured lungs. The friend group's questions came rapid fire. What Bloomberg piece? What boards? How does a consultant have that leverage? Ellie's hand slipped from Paul's, her silence louder than their confusion. Walking her home through cooling night air, she finally turned at her doorstep. What's happening Monday? Paul's exhaustion was bone deep. Come over tomorrow morning. To my place? I need to show you something. The whole truth. Ellie searched his face, saw something there that frightened her. Okay, but Paul, if the gap is as big as I'm starting to think it is, I need to know now, before I fall any further. As her door closed, Paul's phone buzzed. An email preview from his PR team. Bloomberg article, Monday, 6 a.m. The headline made his stomach drop. Young blood and old money. How Paul Hartwell, 28, quietly built a tech empire, while Boston's elite wasn't looking. In 36 hours, everyone would know. His time was up. Ellie climbed 3 flights to Paul's apartment above the used bookstore, her stomach tight with apprehension. Sleep had been impossible. Victoria's words looping like a scratched record. Charity case, the full picture, quite revealing. She half expected an empty apartment, a note explaining he was sorry, but too complicated. Instead, Paul opened the door immediately. Uncombed hair, old sweatpants, MIT t-shirt older than their friendship. He looked exhausted and terrified. Coffee? He offered. This is going to take a while. As he moved through the small kitchen, Ellie's eyes cataloged details she'd always dismissed. The coffee maker was a Technivorm, $400, she knew from design research. The couch was room and board, the laptop, latest MacBook Pro, the books, first editions, the art, originals, not prints. How had she not noticed? Paul handed her coffee in a handmade ceramic mug, sat on the opposite end of the couch, close enough to reach, far enough to give her escape routes. My full name is Paul James Hartwell. 4 years ago, when we met, I told you I worked in consulting. That was a lie. A partial lie. I was consulting for the company I owned. Hartwell Industries. The words landed like physical blows. He told her everything. His father's death at 24, inheriting a company he barely understood, the $4.2 billion valuation, 2,300 employees. His mother's suicide, the fear that money poisoned everything it touched. I needed to know if someone could love me when I was just me, not the balance sheet. Just the guy who kills tomato plants and argues about Die Hard. Ellie sat very still, coffee cooling in her hands. The silence stretched, 90 seconds that felt like drowning. So every time I complained about freelance finances, you were secretly a billionaire. Her voice was measured, controlled. Every time I bought you dinner because you forgot your wallet, you could have bought the restaurant. The entire friend group thinks you're barely scraping by. And you're, what, cosplaying poverty? No. This place, the car, the life, this is real. This is what I choose when I'm not forced into suits and boardrooms. The money exists, but I don't live in it. But you didn't trust me enough to tell me. Her voice cracked. 4 years, Paul. What was the endgame? We date for years. I never noticed the private jet. Paul pulled the platinum compass watch from his pocket, Set it on the coffee table between them. My grandfather gave me this. It's in the Bloomberg article that publishes tomorrow. By Monday morning, everyone will know. I was going to tell you next month, but Victoria forced my hand. I need you to decide, knowing everything, if you still meant what you said at the fire pit. Ellie picked up this watch, traced the engraving. True north is not a direction, but a choice. Poetic. But you chose to lie to me for 4 years. You say you wanted something real, but real relationships don't have billion-dollar secrets. She stood, setting the watch down with a sharp click. I need time to think about whether I can trust you after this, whether the person I fell for even exists. Paul stood too, desperation bleeding through. Ellie, please. Everything between us has been real. My feelings are real. She let him take her hand but didn't grip back. I believe you believe that. But I can't process this in one morning. When the article comes out tomorrow, the whole friend group is going to implode. And I'll be the girl who dated a billionaire without noticing. And as she moved toward the door, Paul's voice stopped her. Victoria isn't done. She's planning something for tomorrow. Please be careful. Ellie turned, expression hard. I can take care of myself, Paul. I've been doing it my whole life without a billion-dollar safety net. The door closed behind her. Paul sank onto the couch, head in hands. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Hope you enjoyed your last quiet Sunday. Tomorrow the fun begins. Oh, and tell Ellie I've arranged a special welcome to your world. She's gonna love it. V. The Bloomberg notification lit up phones across Boston at 6:02 a.m. like synchronized detonations. Young blood and old money. The Paul Hartwell story. Ellie was already awake. Anxiety had murdered sleep hours ago. She read it at her kitchen table. Coffee going cold. Stomach dropping with each paragraph. The numbers were incomprehensible. 4.2 billion, not million, billion. The photos shocked her more. Paul, in a suit that probably cost her monthly rent, standing in a gleaming boardroom, looking nothing like the man who wore thrift store sweaters and argued about whether tacos were sandwiches. This Paul had power radiating from every angle. The Hartwell compass watch prominently visible on the conference table. Her phone erupted. Sophie, Marcus, David, all frantic. Did you see this in messages? She silenced it. By 6:30, the friend group chat was a war zone. Sophie. What the actual hell? Paul is a billionaire? Marcus. 4 years of lies. 4 years. David. We bought him birthday drinks. I feel like an idiot. Jen. Do you think Ellie knew? Ellie typed and deleted 3 responses. Finally. I found out yesterday. Processing. Need space. Well, at 7 a.m., Paul tried calling from his Hartwell Industries executive suite. Full CEO armor now. Navy suit. The professional mask. It went to voicemail. He tried again at 9:30. Voicemail. His text landed like a stone. I know you need space. Just want you to know I'm thinking about you. And at 10 a.m., an unknown number called Ellie's cell. A polished female voice. Miss Morrison, this is Catherine. Assistant to Victoria Ashford Kane. Ms. Ashford Kane would like to extend a lunch invitation today at the Sterling Club. 1 p.m. She'd like to offer advice, woman to woman, on navigating the particular challenges of Paul's world. Ellie's first instinct was to refuse. But curiosity and stubborn pride won. I'll be there. Sophie showed up at 11 a.m., furious. This is a trap. Victoria is a snake. Ellie pulled on her only dress that might pass. Navy sheath from Target, 3 years old. I know it's a trap, but I'm not scared of his world or her threats. The Sterling Club was old money incarnate at 1 p.m., mahogany paneling, oil portraits of dead white men, waiters in white jackets moving like ghosts. Ellie felt underdressed immediately, every eye tracking her discount dress and unmanicured nails. Victoria waited in a private dining room, elegant in Chanel, perfectly composed. She stood graciously, air-kissed near Ellie's cheeks. Ellie, I'm so glad you came. She ordered for both of them, without asking preferences, then launched her assault disguised as concern. When I first started dating Paul, I thought love was enough. But in this world, love is the least important currency. You'll be scrutinized, every outfit judged. People will assume you're with him for money. They'll call you a gold digger, no matter how genuine you are. I'm not with him for money. I didn't know until yesterday. Victoria's smile was pitying. Of course. But does the public know that? Does his board? They see a graphic designer from Jamaica Plain dating one of Boston's most eligible billionaires. The narrative writes itself. She leaned forward, voice dropping to faux concern. Here's what I wanted to tell you. Paul's world will eat you alive. Not because you're not lovely. You are. But because you're not equipped. You don't know which fork to use at a state dinner. You'll always be the outsider, pretending to belong. Victoria's voice turned sharp. Walk away now, with dignity, before the media tears you apart. And Paul, he'll move on. Men like him always do. Ellie set down her water glass, met Victoria's gaze directly. I've spent my whole life being underestimated by people like you. You want me to believe I don't belong, so I'll remove myself as competition. Here's the thing. I don't need to know which fork to use. I know who I am. And maybe that's exactly what Paul needs. Victoria's composure cracked. You're naive. And when this falls apart, and it will, don't say I didn't warn you. Paul's mother killed herself because she couldn't handle this life. What makes you think you're stronger than she was? The cruelty of invoking his mother's suicide landed like a slap. Ellie stood, proud. Proud, despite shaking hands. I think we're done here. And as she walked through the dining room, every eye followed her judgment in their gazes, but she kept her head high. In Sophie's car outside, her phone buzzed. An Instagram DM from an unknown account, a screenshot of her and Paul at the waterfront, captioned Billionaire's new charity project, #golddigger, already reposted 43 times. Victoria's final move wasn't the lunch. It was setting the internet on her. By 4 p.m. Monday, the Instagram post had metastasized. 3,200 reposts and climbing. Boston gossip blogs picked it up. Who is mystery woman with billionaire Paul Hartwell? The photos were unflattering. Ellie caught mid-laugh, hair messy, faded hoodie next to Paul's casual elegance. The comments section was a war zone of curiosity and cruelty. She's actually really pretty. Versus Walmart Barbie bags a billionaire. And his quarterly bonus could buy her entire wardrobe. Ellie made the mistake of reading them. Each one a small cut, death by 1,000 digital knives. The friend group chat had devolved into fracture lines. Marcus was angry about the lying. David felt used. Were we his poverty tourism? Sophie defended Paul, which sparked arguments. The easy intimacy of their friendship felt irreparably damaged. Bleeding out in real time, through text messages none of them knew how to stop sending. At 6 p.m., Paul sat trapped in his office tower, his PR team advising silence. Don't feed the narrative. His lawyers said making public statements about his relationship could backfire. He was imprisoned in strategy sessions when all he wanted was to find Ellie, but he wasn't sure he had the right anymore. His text at 7 p.m. was desperate. Saw the posts. I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I feared. I'm coming over. We need to talk. Ellie stared at her phone. Sophie was on her couch, self-appointed emotional support. You don't have to see him. He lied for years, and now you're getting ripped apart online while he's safe in his tower. But Ellie thought about the Arboretum walk, the movie night, the genuine fear in his eyes during yesterday's confession. She thought about Victoria's smug certainty that she'd run. I'm seeing him, not because I've forgiven him, because I need to know if this is worth fighting for. When Paul opened his apartment door at 8 p.m., he looked wrecked, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. Exhaustion and guilt carved into every line of his face. Ellie brushed past him. Show me your real life. Not the consultant apartment, not the modest car. Show me the parts you've been hiding. Paul didn't argue. He pulled up his phone. The Beacon Hill penthouse he bought but barely uses. 15,000 square feet, $28 million. The company portfolio. The private jet. The offshore accounts. The trust fund that existed before he even inherited. Each revelation was a punch to Ellie's understanding of reality. This is the world you wanted me to walk into blind? Paul cracked, for the first time, his voice breaking. I didn't want you to walk into it at all. I wanted to keep you safe from it. My mother couldn't survive this world, Ellie. It destroyed her. And I've been terrified that if you saw the real scope, you'd realize I'm not worth it. Stop. Ellie's voice cut sharp. Stop deciding what I can handle. You want to know what actually hurts? Not the money, not the mansions. The fact that you looked at me every day for 4 years and thought I was too weak to be trusted with the truth. Paul sank onto the couch, head in hands. You're right. I'm a coward. I've been hiding since my dad died, too scared to claim what I actually need, and what I need is you. But I don't know how to have that and survive the rest. Ellie sat beside him, not touching, but close. Then learn. Stop trying to control the narrative and just be honest. The lying is what's poisonous, not the money. She showed him the viral posts. These people don't know me. They don't know us. I refuse to let Victoria's script become our story. So what do? We show up, together. Tomorrow, community art thing in JP. The friend group will be there. We go. We face them. We stop hiding. Paul searched her face. You're staying after everything? I'm willing to try. If you promise, no more lies, ever. Paul extended his hand. No more lies. Full transparency. Even when it scares me. Ellie shook it, then pulled him into a fierce hug. As Paul walked her home later, both phones buzzed simultaneously. An email to them. And the entire friend group? Think you know Paul Hartwell? Ask him about Hartwell. Industry's acquisition of community spaces in Jamaica Plain. Ask how many families were displaced for investment purposes. Not so noble now. A concerned citizen. Attached, real estate transactions, zoning changes, eviction notices. Paul's face went white. I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Ellie. But she was already reading, and the doubt in her eyes cut deeper than any internet comment. Mozart Park, at dusk, smelled like fresh-cut grass and welding metal. David's friend was showcasing sculptures that twisted industrial salvage into something resembling hope. The spring evening carried voices and laughter, children on swings, the distant rumble of the Orange Line. It should have felt like home. Instead, Paul felt like he was walking into a firing squad. He'd spent the afternoon in emergency meetings, pulling every document related to the Jamaica Plain acquisitions. The truth was complicated. 3 buildings purchased 4 years ago. 2 converted to affordable housing through a nonprofit subsidiary. 1 became mixed-use retail residential. But 12 families were displaced during renovations. Legal relocation packages, but impersonal. Paul had signed approvals without reviewing individual cases. The concerned citizen email cherry-picked displacement data without mentioning the affordable housing component. Technically misleading, but not entirely wrong. Ellie had done her own investigation, calling Sophie, who knew half the neighborhood. My cousin got one of the new affordable units, Sophie had reported. Nicer than her old place, rent-controlled. Whoever sent that email is spinning a story. Now, approaching the friend group gathered near a 15-foot steel phoenix, Paul felt Ellie's hand tighten in his. Marcus and Jen were cordial but distant. David's expression was openly cold. Sophie was Switzerland, desperately trying to keep peace. So, Billionaire Boy decided to grace us with his presence. David's tone could strip paint. Did you come in the Civic or the private jet? Paul accepted the hit. I deserve that. I deserve all of it. I lied to you for 4 years, and I'm not going to defend it, but I'd like the chance to explain and to apologize properly. They moved to a quieter corner. Paul sat on a bench, and it felt like confession. He told them everything, losing his father, inheriting too young, drowning in responsibility, needing something real that wasn't tied to money. You were the only people who knew me before the billions. I should have trusted you with the truth. I didn't because I was terrified of losing you. And the lying is what's costing me that anyway. Marcus's anger was raw. 4 years, man. 4 years of treating you like you needed help. You let us feel sorry for you when you could have bought the bar? Sophie cut in. Did Paul ever ask you to feel sorry for him? Did he take advantage? She turned to Paul. You're an idiot for lying, but you weren't cruel. You were scared. Jen brought up the concerned citizen email. Paul explained the full context, the affordable housing, the relocation packages, the one building that did displace families without ideal resolution. I made decisions from a boardroom without thinking about real people's lives. That's on me. When I found out, I tried to make it right, but most families had already moved on. Often I talked to Sophie's cousin, Ellie added. She lives in one of the affordable units. The building is great, but the displacement was real, Paul. You should have reviewed those cases personally. You're right. And I'm working on systems now to prevent that. All I can do is be better going forward. David finally extended a hand. I'm still pissed, but I've known you for 4 years, and you're not a bad guy. Just don't lie to us again, ever. The group didn't fully reconcile, but there was thawing. They agreed to keep talking, rebuild trust slowly. Walking Ellie home through cooling night air, she asked the hard question, are there any other secrets? Any other bombs waiting? Paul considered lying, but remembered his promise. Nothing on this scale, but my world is complicated. What I can promise is I'll never hide the important things again. If it would affect us, I need to know. Deal? Deal. They stopped at her building. Paul cupped her face, kissed her softly. Thank you for staying, for fighting for this. As Ellie headed inside, Paul's phone rang. Unknown number. Victoria's voice, icy and satisfied. Enjoying your little reconciliation? Tell Ellie to check her work email in the morning. I've sent something special to her biggest client, the Thompson branding contract she's been courting for 6 months. Let's see if they still want to hire a gold digger's services. Sleep well, Paul. The email arrived at 7 a.m. like a guillotine blade. Subject line, concerns about professional association. And Sarah Thompson, CEO of Thompson Branding, the client whose contract would double Ellie's annual income, wrote with professional cruelty. Recent social media attention, questions about judgment and discretion, concerns about becoming a distraction, regretful decision to pursue other designers. Unsigned, impersonal, devastating. Ellie let herself cry, not defiant tears, but the exhausted kind that came from realizing the true cost of this battle. Major client lost. Reputation shredded online, friend group fractured, all because she fell in love with the wrong person, or maybe the right person, in impossible circumstances. Sophie arrived at 7:45 with coffee and rage. This is Victoria. We need to fight back. But Ellie was numb. How? She has resources, connections, power. I'm a freelance designer from JP. This is exactly what she warned, his world eating me alive. When Paul called at 8 a.m. and heard the devastation in her voice, fury replaced his guilt. Victoria's threat echoed, check her work email in the morning. I'm ending this. Today. No. Ellie's voice steadied. If you swoop in and fix this, call Thompson, use your influence. You prove her point, that I can't survive without you rescuing me. I need to handle this myself. I need to know I can stand on my own in your world, or I'll never believe I belong in it. Every instinct screamed at Paul to call Thompson, to threaten legal action, to use his power, but he heard the steel beneath Ellie's hurt. Okay, but I'm done playing defense. Victoria wants a war, I'm taking the fight to her. At 10 a.m., Paul stood before his board at Hartwell Industries and made an announcement. He was stepping back from the public-facing CEO role, effective immediately. His COO would handle external relations. And he was selling the Beacon Hill penthouse, liquidating non-essential assets, establishing the Hartwell Community Fund, $500 million dedicated to affordable housing and small business grants in displaced communities. He sent the press release to Victoria personally. You wanted me to choose between your world and mine. I choose mine. Leave Ellie alone, or the next thing I liquidate is your family's foundation funding. At 11 a.m., Ellie sat at her desk staring at her portfolio. Then she did something bold. She created a website. Designed by Ellie Morrison, affordable, authentic, unapologetically real. She wrote a blog post on building a career when the internet decides you're a gold digger. In it, she addressed the viral posts, the assumptions, the cruelty, with humor, honesty, zero apologies. She talked about being a scholarship kid, choosing freelance life for freedom, refusing to be ashamed of falling in love. She posted it, shared it, waited. By 1 p.m., it had gone unexpectedly viral. Thousands of shares from women who'd been judged, dismissed, underestimated. Local Boston businesses started commenting with support, offering collaborations. A Cambridge branding agency reached out. We love your work and your voice. Want to talk about a partnership. It wasn't Thompson's contract, but it was something she built herself. At 3 p.m., realizing she was losing control, Victoria played her final card. She leaked a story to Society reporters. Paul's company was under SE investigation for financial irregularities, a lie. And Ellie was actually a corporate spy trying to gain access through romance. Absurd, but scandalous enough to print. At 5 p.m., Victoria called Paul directly. Here's the deal. You dump the waitress publicly, I retract the SEC story, and we both move on. Or you let this play out, the investigation rumors, tank your stock, and her reputation is destroyed anyway. Print whatever you want, Victoria. I don't care about the stock price. I don't care about the Society pages. I care about being someone my mother would have been proud of. And that person doesn't negotiate with bullies. He hung up. Paul called his lawyer. File for defamation. File for harassment. Then he called Ellie. Victoria's making her final move. It's going to get ugly tomorrow. But I'm all in. No matter what she prints, I'm standing with you. A long pause, then, come over tonight. We face tomorrow together. As Paul drove to her apartment, his lawyer called back. The SEC thing is fabricated, but she's filing a lawsuit claiming you breached fiduciary duty. Bullshit, but it'll be in the news. And there's something else. She's subpoenaed your personal communications for the past year, including texts with Ellie. If there's anything that could be twisted, you need to tell me now. Wednesday night at 9 p.m., Paul arrived at Ellie's apartment with Thai takeout and visible exhaustion. They ate on her modest couch, and he told her everything. Victoria's ultimatum, the lawsuit threat, the subpoena of their texts. She's going to try to make our relationship look ugly. Strategic, calculated. She'll take our most intimate moments and twist them. She can read our texts, the private ones? Ellie's voice was small. Paul nodded. Ellie thought about the vulnerable messages, her confession about falling for him, his late-night texts when he couldn't sleep, stupid inside jokes, all about to become court exhibits. That's violating. But then her expression shifted. But also, let her read them. Every text shows what we actually are. Real people being honest, being messy, being human. If she thinks that proves manipulation, she's already lost. They spent the night reviewing their text history, preparing for what might be leaked. There was nothing scandalous. No discussion of money, no gold digger confessions, Victoria's narrative required. Just two people slowly falling in love through movie recommendations, bad jokes, vulnerability. This is the evidence she thinks will destroy us? Ellie almost laughed. We're sickeningly wholesome. At 8 a.m. Thursday, Paul's lawyer called with news. Victoria's lawsuit was flimsier than expected. But press coverage was spinning up. The Sterling Club Private Reserve Society has scheduled a noon emergency meeting about protecting Boston's legacy families from opportunistic relationships. Transparently about Paul and Ellie. I'm going to the meeting, Paul said. His lawyer advised against it. Paul, I can't. Ellie's fear surfaced. That's their territory. I'll be the scholarship kid again, the outsider. Paul took her hands. You'll be the woman I love, who is brilliant and strong and doesn't need their approval. I'm asking if you'll stand with me when I walk away from their world for good. At noon, they arrived together at the Sterling Club. Paul in a suit, but casual, no tie. Ellie in the navy target dress, head high, borrowed clutch, and the confidence of someone who'd decided she belonged anywhere she chose to be. 15 of Boston's elite gathered in the private dining room. Old money, society matrons, board members. Victoria sat at the head, perfectly composed. When Paul and Ellie entered, silence fell like a hammer. Paul didn't ask permission. He pulled out a chair for Ellie, sat beside her, addressed the room. I know why you're here. Victoria has convinced you I need protecting from an opportunistic relationship. Let me be clear. I don't need your protection. I don't need your approval. And I don't need to be part of a society that measures worth by bloodlines and bank accounts rather than character. Paul, you're being dramatic, Victoria interrupted. We're concerned about your judgment. My company just committed $500 million to affordable housing. We're divesting from luxury real estate. We're restructuring to prioritize community impact over maximum profit. If that damages our reputation with this crowd, I'm fine with that. And Paul pulled out his grandfather's compass watch, set it on the mahogany table. My grandfather gave me this. True north is not a direction but a choice. He meant integrity isn't about following paths laid out by others. He looked directly at Victoria. You've spent weeks trying to humiliate the woman I love. Why? Because you can't imagine someone choosing authenticity over access. That says everything about you and nothing about us. Ellie stood, facing the room of judgment. You don't know me. You've decided I'm a gold digger who doesn't belong. And you're right. I don't belong here. Not because I'm less than you, but because I don't want to be part of a world that measures people this way. Paul doesn't belong here either. Paul stood with her. We're done here. Victoria, your lawsuit is baseless. Your harassment stops now. Or I'll make sure every board you sit on knows exactly why our engagement ended, including the affair you had with my business rival to gather competitive intelligence. Yes, I know. I've always known. Victoria's composure shattered completely. The affair revelation was news to the room. Shock rippled through the society matrons. Victoria's power was always reputation, and Paul just destroyed it. Paul took Ellie's hand. They walked out through the historic lobby, past portraits of founding members, into Beacon Hill sunshine. On the cobblestone street, Ellie started laughing. Did we just do that? Paul grinned, reckless and free. I think we did. How do you feel? Terrified, exhilarated, like I'm flying or falling. But Paul pulled her close, kissed her in full view of the Sterling Club windows. Then we're falling together. Later that evening, Ellie got an email from Sarah Thompson. I owe you an apology. The board member who pressured me to drop your contract has been asked to resign for ethical violations. I've read your viral post. If you're still interested, the contract is yours. Plus 20% above original rate for the unprofessionalism. 6 weeks later, Arnold Arboretum glowed with late August light, golden afternoon sun filtering through leaves that would soon turn crimson. Paul and Ellie walked the familiar meadow path, the same trail where everything had shifted from friendship to possibility, from fear to courage. Now it felt different, easier, earned, real. Life had settled into new rhythm. Paul worked from a small JP office focusing on product development closer to home. The Beacon Hill penthouse sold. Proceeds went to the Hartwell Community Fund. He still had wealth, obscene amounts he'd never fully spend, but he'd restructured his relationship with it. The friend group had slowly rebuilt. Movie nights resumed, fire pit gatherings. Marcus even invited Paul to speak to his students about ethical business. Ellie's viral post had sparked a wave of clients wanting authentic brand voices. She'd hired 2 other designers, formed a small collective, working more hours than ever, but on her own terms. The internet had moved on. The gold digger narrative died when people realized the relationship was real. Victoria had quietly left Boston after the Sterling Club incident, relocated to New York, reportedly engaged to a hedge fund manager. Paul felt no satisfaction in her downfall, just relief that the war was over. Paul stopped at the 100-year-old lilac tree where they'd sat that first night. Ellie knew immediately. Her eyes went wide. Paul? He grinned, nervous despite certainty. Just hear me out. When I joked about marrying you at Doyle's, I didn't mean it. Not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't think I deserved it. But you showed me another option, being honest, being real, building something that matters. He pulled out a ring, simple platinum band with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious. This is just me, asking the woman I love if she'll build a life with me. The messy, complicated, imperfect kind where we figure it out together. Paul knelt on the dusty path, suit pants in the dirt. Ellie Morrison, will you marry me? For real this time? She pulled him up, laughing and crying. Yes, obviously yes. I thought you'd never ask again. They kissed under the lilac tree where everything had shifted, where the joke became real, became love, became this. 1 month later, they married at the Jamaica Plain Community Garden, where the friend group first formed. 40 people. Friends, employees, neighbors. Sophie officiated. David catered. The decorations were Ellie's designs. Simple, beautiful, authentic. Paul's vows. I promise to never hide from you. I promise to remember that the best parts of my life have nothing to do with my bank account. I promise to be your partner, not your rescuer. And I promise that every day I'll choose you over the easier path. Ellie's vows. I promise to call you out when you're being an idiot billionaire. I promise to remind you who you are when the world tries to tell you who you should be. And I promise that I'll never stop being the person who laughed at your tomato plants. The reception was everything the Sterling Club wasn't. Casual, joyful, unpretentious. Sophie toasted about knowing they were endgame from the fire pit. Ellie danced barefoot in the grass, and Paul watched her with awe that money couldn't buy. Later, as sunset painted the sky, they slipped to the garden's edge, sat on the bench where they'd first met 4 years ago. So what now? Ellie asked. We live, Paul said. Small, normal days. We work on things that help people. We have Sunday dinners with friends. We figure out how to use ridiculous amounts of money to do good. We argue about Die Hard. We're just us. And then maybe eventually we have kids who we teach that wealth is a responsibility, not an identity, Ellie added. Paul kissed her forehead. That sounds perfect. When, as they rejoined the party, Paul's thoughts turned philosophical. People always asked what it felt like to be a billionaire, as if the money itself was the feeling. But money is just numbers, assets, power you didn't earn. It can't buy what actually matters. What I found with Ellie isn't purchased or inherited. It's chosen. Every day, we choose each other, choose honesty over performance, choose authentic connection over strategic networking. That's the real wealth, not the fortune, but the courage to be vulnerable enough to risk it all for something real. That's the billionaire heart. The camera pulls back, Paul and Ellie dancing under string lights, surrounded by people who chose to be there, celebrating love that survived scrutiny and scandal. Ellie throws her head back laughing, and Paul looks at her like she's the only thing in the world that matters. Because in the ways that count, she is. The Hartwell compass watch now rests in a shadow box in their JP apartment, beside a framed photo from the fire pit night, Paul and Ellie laughing, before everything changed and everything began. True North is not a direction, but a choice. Fictional disclaimer. This is a work of fiction created for entertainment purposes only. All characters, events, companies, and situations depicted in this story are entirely fictional and products of creative imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, real businesses, or actual events is purely coincidental and unintentional. The portrayal of wealth, business practices, social dynamics, and personal relationships in this narrative are dramatized for storytelling purposes and do not reflect real-world business operations, legal procedures, or social interactions. This story is not intended to provide financial, legal, or relationship advice.